Welcome to lesson 7. In this lesson, we'll kind of tie together the previous lessons, the things that we've learned, including a few new modules. The new modules will be using the scanner class to ask the user for information and working on that information. So after we take the information that the user inputs, we will manipulate the data with arithmetic operators. We'll store the information in an array, and then we'll use our repetitive loops to iterate through the array and display results to the screen. In this lesson, we'll be creating a grade book. We'll say this grade book's for the teacher, and it will ask the teacher for 5 student grades. After inputting the 5 grades, it will calculate the averages of the 5 and display the class average. So let's go ahead and create our program. So to start, we need to import the scanner class. So we will import Java utility scanner, and that will allow us to use the pre-configured scanner classes. So when I'm programming, I like to stick to a few rules, and my first rule is that I like to group together all of my declared variables in the beginning. That kind of helps me keep track of what variables I will be using throughout the application. In this application, I will need to declare the scanner object, so that way I can pull information from the user. So to do this, we use scanner, which is the object type, or the class type. We'll name it. I'll name it input equals a new scanner, and we're going to do system.in. Next, I will need to initialize a grade average. So we'll do an integer of a grade average. This will be used later on when we calculate the grade average. I'll also need a subtotal to calculate to add all the 5 grade averages together. We'll declare that to start at 0. And then I'll also need an array. So to create an array, we are going to use an integer to store our grades. So I want to do an integer. Use 2 brackets, open and close. That kind of initiates the array. I'm going to name my array grades, and then we're going to declare it as a new integer array of 5 spaces. It is important to note that once you declare the size of the array, you cannot later change it. You can create a new array, but because of this limitation, some individuals choose to use the array list class, but for demonstration purposes, we're going to go ahead and use the built-in array in Java. So we declared an array with 5 spaces. So essentially this would look like this. It would have space 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. So essentially 5 spaces to hold data. Next, we're going to need a counter. And I'm going to set my counter equal to 0. So we've declared a couple variables, and let's see how we're going to use them in the application. So the first thing I want my application to do is ask the teacher the first 5 grades. So to do this repetitively, I could do 5 statements and do them all manually, or I could use a while loop. So I'm going to go ahead and do the easy route. Use a while loop while counter is less than 5. I'm going to output to the computer, or out to the user, what is the grade of student, and we'll do %d and %n. We will have to change this to printf. %d %n to do the current student, or the counter variable, and then the number, or a new line. And we'll go ahead and label it as counter here. Okay, so that will just output to the screen, but next we need to actually gather the information that the user inputs. So we'll use to pull the information in, we'll name the grades counter. So that will, the first iteration will be grade 0, so the first spot of the array. will be equal to, we'll use our scanner object, and then we'll grab the next integer that it finds. In the while loop, we'll also increase the iteration by 1 every time. So let's go ahead and run this just to see how it looks for now. What is the grade of student 0? Let's say his grade was an 80%. What is the grade of student 1? Let's go ahead and put 70. And then it'll just iterate through 5 times. Okay, cool. So now we've got all that information that was stored in our array, but we need to use the information now. I'm going to go ahead and take out this %n just to make it look nice, and I'll put the %n in the beginning. That way it uses it on the same line. Okay, so now after we've gathered the information, and I can comment my code here, gather information from the user. Next we need to process the information. So let's process the information. So we can use a for loop to iterate through the array and gather the grades and put them into our subtotal counter. So for integer I, and we'll start at the 0 position of the array, we want to say that the integer I is less than the length of the array. So we'll do grades.length. So that basically will say to the program that's seeing it as 5, because there are 5 positions. And then we'll increase I by 1 every iteration. Okay, and then here we will use the subtotal plus equals to add the previous subtotal to the new value, and we will add on the current position of the grades. At the end of the iteration, we want to display the information to the teacher. So display the current grade average. To do this, we have to calculate the grade average. So we'll say grade average is equal to the subtotal divided by the length of the array. Or we could just say 5 here. And we'll display the information the class grade average is %d, and we want to output the grade average. Okay, so let's go ahead and run this and see what it says. The grades, well, I'll just kind of manually ham-jam several grades here. The class average is 72. Cool. So we've got the class average there, and our application is basically done. However, I do want to show you another way to iterate through an array. So here we said integer I equals 0, we use 3 statements. There is a simpler way to iterate through arrays, and it's much faster to type. So we can say for integer I in grades. So for every position in grades, we want to add the subtotal, and here we don't even need to put grades, we can put I. So let's go ahead and see how much simpler this was. So for every position which we're pulling as I, we're going to pull it from here. So let's go ahead and run this. Again, I'll manually enter various values, and we get the same result. This is just a simple application that we created to pull grade point averages. We could easily change up the mechanics of this and use this for other applications like names or car sales or anything of that nature. Again, in this lesson we went over the Java Scanner class, which is used to pull information from the user. We talked about arrays, and we kind of pulled information from previous lessons to create an actual real-life scenario.